Hello and welcome to this episode of the Rest is Entertainment Questions and Answers edition. I'm Marina Hyde.
And I'm Richard Osman. Hi, Marina. And lots of our wonderful listeners, hello listeners, have asked us questions.
And they have. And what they've done is they've asked us at the old email address because we've gone official.
We've got a new email address.
We have. It's therestisentertainment@goalhanger.com. I had no idea we worked for Gary Lineker, but anyhow.
Whoa.
So
does Gary Lineker know we work for him?
It's so unclear. The angles are all unclear at the moment, but that is the new email address should you wish to send us more of your brilliant questions.
therestisentertainment@goalhanger.com.
Yeah.
Ask us what's Gary Lineker like. We've never met him. Occasionally he appears as like a hologram floating over the desk, doesn't he? And he goes, "You are all doing terrifically well in your podcast." That's the only thing we ever have to do with Gary.
Yeah.
Occasionally Alan Shearer will pop in like an enforcer just to check that everything's going okay. And he goes, "Good podcast. Be a shame if anything happened to it." I can see Shearer, but he's pressing his face up against the window of the thing. Oh, and he's doing like a slit throat. Come on, Shearer.
Maybe he's just saying he's got a sore throat.
Have you got a sore? Oh yeah, he's having a strepsil. Everything is fine. Should we get onto some questions?
Let's hit each other with some questions. I've got one that I have to begin with you. It relates to Deal or No Deal. Jonathan Hindley says there's an urban legend that a contestant on opening the last box between 250k and 1p sadly opened their final box and got 1p. Then an anonymous donor called in and gave them the 250k. The anonymous donor was allegedly George Michael. Is this true? If so, how do acts such as this work?
It's not an urban legend. I'd heard. Isn't it interesting how things work? Because it is definitely based on a truth. That's for sure. And that is, there was somebody who was playing a Deal or No Deal many years ago, and Noel at various points says, "What do you want the money for?" And she was using it for a final round of IVF. I think she'd had 3 rounds and she wanted to do a final round. Anyone who's done IVF knows it's very, very expensive. Can't remember how much she needed, 18,000, something like that. Anyway, she crashed and burned on the show, won £500 or something like that. And the morning after it came out, there's a call at Endemol into my good pal Tim Hinks, who we used to run Endemol with. And the person said, "I was watching the woman on Deal or No Deal who needed £18,000 for IVF. I'd like to pay that £18,000, please." And Tim goes, "Okay, we can do that." He said, "There's one condition, that is you must never tell her who has paid this money." And Tim goes, "Okay, but who is paying this money?" And it was George Michael. Oh. So George Michael had been sitting watching this thing. He said, and also there was a guy last week who he had to go to vet school, something like that, and I'd like to pay his as well, but again, you mustn't tell him. So he did that. She got the money, and when George passed away, I put this on Twitter. I said that he had done that, and the woman got in touch and she said, "Do you know what? Never forgotten the fact that I got that money. I never knew who it was from." She said the IVF it didn't work, and now to find out it was George as well is an extraordinary thing. So yeah, he was essentially just sitting watching at home and decided he wanted to give. The actual version of the urban legend isn't true, but the heart of that urban legend, which was George Michael was an extraordinary human being and an extraordinary kind man, is absolutely true. Isn't that lovely? That
is such a lovely story. I knew that he used to do things like that, but you do slightly feel like, are they urban legends? And it's not really clear. But
sad to be able to tell the story, so we can only tell the story because he's no longer with us, because he was absolutely adamant. No one finds out. No one knows I'm doing this. And that's the true meaning of selflessness, isn't it? It's not, oh, this would make me feel good about myself, or this would, this is going to look good for me.
The truly selfless good deed.
And also, he just used to sit around watching daytime TV all day, didn't he?
Yeah,
which makes you warm to him even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you ever feature someone who needs money on a television show, it's all someone will always ring up. Someone will always message and say, "Has that been taken care of?" And almost always it has. Almost always there's been 10, 12, 15, 20 people who've all emailed in, have all rung in just saying, "Is there anything I can do to help? Is there any money I can give?" It's not always George Michael.
No.
But it's just people who are watching TV and have that money.
I mean, at the end of the last season of Traitors, when Alexander didn't win, they banished him because they weren't sure if he was a traitor or not. And he wanted to start a charity in his late brother's name. And so many people, there was a sort of crowdfunder for that, wasn't there? And it went way above what he would have ever even won on the show, almost immediately. So people do kind of step in.
And he's now got his own show on Classic FM, right? He's a real media mover and shaker, isn't he? I have a question for you, Marina, from John Gill. John says, "Is it just me?" Oh, I like it. You never know where this is going. "Is it just me?" says John Gill. Oh, John, what if it is? Oh no, should I read on? Is it just me, or is there far less romance on screen nowadays? I know Marina suggested that Twisters was loveless, but is this a growing problem?
By the way, what happens at the end of Twister? Sorry, this is not a major plot point. I want to say that Glenn Powell asks the Daisy Edgar Jones character for her informed consent to phone her after the credits. It's genuinely, it couldn't be more sort of sexless. I do think, well, first of all, my opinions, let's back it up with some statistics first. Yes, the number of romantic movies is definitely falling. In 2000, nearly 35% of films that were made were listed as romance. It's now something like 8%.
Really? And is it on the IMDb where everything's put into various categories?
Yeah, into categories. Yeah. But that's happened before. They it had there was a bit of a drop in romance until the 60s, and then it kind of recovered. Now it's I don't want to say it's on a permanent decline because everything comes in and out of fashion, but it really is. I really think comedy and obviously in romantic comedy, romance and comedy, by the way, are the two genres in biggest trouble. The streamers are trying to revive romantic comedies, and obviously they had a big success. Netflix had a big success with Nobody Wants This. So in general, both of those genres are in a lot of trouble, really. Cinema, romance and sex in general is kind of weird because movies have been definitely desexed in recent years. And there's lots of different reasons for this. Gen Z don't particularly love it, and they're always trying to get them in. They're much more interested in things about self-care, relationships, self-love. I don't mean masturbation. Yeah. When you look at Marvel films, as I've said before, they were almost entirely sexist. There's one guy who has sex, and he has to be fired into the sun quite soon afterwards.
It's very hard to get out of the suits.
It's very hard to get out. But what you have is people who are in beyond peak physical fitness. They're like Olympic athletes. Big motives really are sort of sex, money and revenge. And if you remove one of them, then you're sort of slightly contracting the possibilities of storytelling.
Money or revenge.
But yeah.
But the motive is always I want to take over the world for unspecified reasons.
And I want to fight you for that glowy thing to stop you. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't just want to bang someone.
Yeah. But the British Board of Film Classification, there's fewer films rated 18 for sex, far fewer. The ubiquity of porn has changed a lot of stuff. I remember in newspapers when they used to do Kiss and Tells, which, Sunday tabloid, there'd be a Kiss and Tell and someone would expose their affair with a politician. There would always be a few paragraphs of description of the sex in it. You could just buy that in the newsagent. But now you can just have anything you want to extreme levels on your phone.
Yeah, we don't need to read about David Mellor anymore.
We don't actually need to get turned on vicariously by what David Mellor did or didn't do. As Hollywood has become more and more sexless, the porn industry has got bigger and bigger.
I think it's become more sexual. The porn really now is very, very sexual.
Yeah, the rest is adult entertainment. Yeah. For the reasons I explained in terms of storytelling, if you remove kind of romance and sex and things like that, you are contracting the possibilities. The idea that cinema was a kind of boundary pushing art form in lots of ways, and you could see things in the cinema that you couldn't necessarily see elsewhere, I think that has receded slightly as well. You don't really feel that. But
also books, have gone crazy for romance. Books are absolutely huge. Romantasy and romance itself. Colleen Hoover, all the biggest selling books in the world are romance books now, and a lot of those are being adapted. There is a whole industry that has gone very, very romance heavy, and perhaps that will drip feed back into movies. So not sex heavy maybe, but maybe romance heavy.
I feel that everything swings around and it must come round again.
That's sex for you.
Yeah.
But the good news, John Gill, is it is not just you. It is not just you.
Not just you, John.
It's everyone.
A puzzles question, Richard, meaning it is by law for you.
That's for me.
Lizzie Knopfler.
You do sex, I do puzzles.
That makes it sound a lot more interesting than it is. Lizzie Konecki, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that well. How are the New York Times games created, Richard? Are they made by people or is there some kind of AI involved?
They are made by people. The New York Times games section is one of the single most successful and profitable creative endeavours of the 21st century. It's a huge thing. It's played by a huge amount of people. And, most people who do the New York Times games are, absolutely evangelical about them. I'll tell you the order they do them in. The order I do them in, spelling bee, always first. Me and Ingrid always play spelling bee, and we race to get to genius. And whoever gets to genius first is the winner, and crows about it. And then we team up to try and get to Queen Bee. That's what we try and do on spelling bee. Then the crossword, the New York Times crossword is not a cryptic one, but it's very cleverly gridded. Then there's strands, which is this sort of word puzzle. These are sort of high-end versions of other people's games. Then there's connections, which we will get onto because that's a very, very interesting one. But no, they are definitively not AI-led, which is why they're so good, I think. So Spelling Bee is a really interesting one. So Spelling Bee is absolutely huge. It's enormous, created by a guy called Frank Longo. And Spelling Bee, if you don't know it, it's sort of one of those word things, where you've got letters around a middle letter and you have to make words. It's got a very, very simple trick, which is you can use the letters more than once. So long as you use the one in the middle, you can use letters more than once, which makes it incredibly addictive. And it has a very clever scoring system. If you start, you get to solid, then you're on nice, then you're on great, then you're on amazing, then you're on genius, and then you can get to Queen Bee. So it's incredibly addictive. But no, every single day, made by real people. Sam Azersky is the guy who puts those together. It's interesting to answer this question this week because something happened on Spelling Bee last week that's never happened before.
I felt a disturbance in the force.
For the 2,500th Spelling Bee, a letter was on the grid that has never been on for the first 2,499 Spelling Bees. There had never before then been a letter S in a Spelling Bee. Ever in the history, because Sam Azersky thinks it sort of makes it too complicated / easy when you got plurals and, so because it was the 2,500th one and the pangram was fabulous as the first time ever there's been an S. Hasn't been one since either. So it's the only S of all time.
Wow.
People love playing those games and they take exactly the right amount of time and you can always test yourself against other people. You can go back and play the archive. The crossword is extraordinary. It has these incredibly dense grids. Will Shortz was the great genius behind most of the MIT crosswords, and Sam Azersky does lots of those as well. But Connections is the one I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So Connections is the one,
You haven't talked about anything up to this point.
Connections is...
I've got a cup of coffee, I'm fine.
...is a thing. There's 16 words, and you have to put them into 4 groups of 4. 4 sets of 4, and if you do that, you win. And they launched it a couple of years ago, 18 months ago maybe, and said, we've got this brand new game. It's called Connections. You have to connect 4 groups of 4. And the whole of Britain went, oh, you've invented that, have you? I'm sorry, New York Times, because, by the way, we love the New York Times puzzles page and we love the people involved. But sorry, wonderful news to hear that you've invented this game, which is you've got let's say like a wall of 16 clues and you have to put them into 4 subgroups and we put them together and then we score points. This is amazing. You call it Connections. You say Connections. That's interesting. What does that remind me of? Connections. Oh, because we have a show called Only Connect, which has been doing The Wall for about 12 years. And when they brought Connections out, everyone told them this. I think Vicky Corrin told them, like everyone was saying, oh, you know that you haven't invented this.
Yeah.
You know you haven't invented this. You know this. And they have publicly never said anything about it and still going, this is our great new game, Connections. And listen, I play it. I get it. But it's...
Have they not said anything?
No.
Grow up, America.
I know. Sometimes it always... Oh, no, because they're names of Reese's Pieces products. You think, but we don't have them over here. So I just have to wait to the end. I don't know what connects them. Like stuff from like the real world I can do, but they always say, oh no, they're all Canadian ice hockey teams, if you think about it. You go,
they're all in the Lucky Charms box. Right, okay.
Are they? And, when you get to... Because you can usually isolate the last group and you go, I have no idea what that is. This is going to be something from American pop culture. And they go, and of course it was all nicknames from Leave It to Beaver. And you go, oh, yeah, it was. So listen, I bow to very few people in my love of the New York Times puzzles page, and the people behind it love it. They lovingly curate these things, which is why they're so good. All done by human beings, not done by AI, but they definitely ripped off the Only Connect wall for Connections. Listen, I look forward to the puzzle wars in the future. In 40 years' time,
what will I have done for a puzzle?
When the world...
I'm shocked what moral compromises I've made.
We'll look back and go, it's funny, isn't it? Because we thought that the Third World War would come from, be like Trump or it'd be Putin or be something like Musk would have done something. And you go, and you look back and it all came down to Only Connect fans against the Connections fans. And that's why the world is a wasteland. And that's my view of what's going to happen.
On that dystopian note, perhaps we should go to the advert.
Yeah, should we? This episode is brought to you by Sky, where you can watch unmissable shows such as the new season of Gangs of London, the BAFTA-winning Emmy-nominated series starring Joe Cole, Michelle Fairley and Chope Dirisu.
Now, Richard, in season 3, chaos erupts after a spiked drugs shipment floods the streets, killing hundreds of civilians. But Here is the twist.
I mean, it sounds like a big enough twist already, but you know I love a twist.
I know you love a twist. Despite shipment, it wasn't an accident. It was a planned and calculated attack.
Oh my God, knowing what I do about TV crime and writing all that sort of stuff, I suspect this is just the beginning.
Correctamundo.
I love your catchphrase. So bring me and maybe anyone listening up to speed who hasn't seen the first 2 seasons of Gangs of London. People absolutely love this show.
In the first 2 seasons, we saw the battle for power between Sean and Elliot. Let's not forget he's an undercover cop.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it came to a climactic head with Sean's now in prison at the start of season 3. Now, the aftermath of all of that has sparked a brutal power struggle right across the capital's underworld. We're talking tested loyalties, shifting alliances, unexpected betrayals. Who can be trusted? Elliot, who we've seen fight very hard to obtain power, struggles to hold on to it, while behind bars, Sean is still able to wield influence and affect events outside the prison walls, meaning the various gangs are looking over their shoulders, not knowing who to trust.
In my books, I have a drug dealer called Connie Johnson, who's always in prison, but she's always got like an Nespresso machine, and her Wi-Fi is absolutely sensational. I cannot wait to see what unfolds. Genuinely, so many people have told me about this show. Watch season 3 of the BAFTA-winning Sky original Gangs of London on Sky right now. Welcome back, everybody. Marina, I have a question. Chris Shipp was saying, I was wondering if when you see that shot of a plane taking off a landing at an airport to signify a character has departed or arrived, there has to be a second unit to go down to the airport and get some shots, or is there just a big vault of these shots, / different planes, / airports, etc.?
Yes, there is. There are airport establishing shots you can just get. There are banks of these things because it is expensive. And obviously, you have to have a load of permits to film at an airport, and it's just it does sometimes happen, but not in general. One of the other things Chris has actually said was that I'm sure there'll be people watching a film and saying that's definitely not Albuquerque Airport because they don't have those runway lights. Oh my God, please. Plane nerds, please don't write in. Are some of they can't watch anything. They notice every single little thing. There are people who say, I can't possibly watch Top Gun because the Russian MiGs are just resprayed F5s.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Because how would the American Air Force have got them? Yeah. Marina, would be my question.
Yeah.
It's an absurdity. Think of the geopolitical things that would have had to go on.
So that Mr. Tom Cruise could win World War III. Okay, any form of hardware, particularly military stuff, is the stuff that has people lighting up the internet to say, sorry, how's that plane got a gun? That particular model of aircraft doesn't have a gun.
Sorry, a Routemaster bus in 1959, but it's a Mark III.
Yeah. What tank are you now using?
Interesting, Mr. Scorsese. The film is ruined.
As you know, I'm a franchise completist on the Fast franchise, and I think it's Fast and Furious 6, where there's a fight on the right. You know, the plane is approaching takeoff, and it's going really quite fast because it's about to approach takeoff speed. And it goes on for something like 4 minutes. At that speed, I think the runway, people were working out it was going to be like, is this a 25, 26 mile runway? I mean, it's literally bigger than the English Channel so that they can have this fight. Now,
and was that a shot that was just in a bank, or did they have to film that themselves?
Well, that's...
I joke. I jest.
A Vin
so
Diesel
sorry.
fight. There's no archive of those, Richard. Every one of those is a true original. One of the most famous shots in lots of ways, which is a really great story, and it's from The Devil's Candy, which was written by a woman called Julie Salomon. I might have mentioned it before, but it's all about the filming of Bonfire of the Vanities, which is a huge 80s movie that they spend a lot of money on, and it's a complete flop. It's based on a massive sort of hit Tom Wolfe book that started
one of the best
series,
books of all time, in my opinion.
Which is brilliant, yeah. And but magazine, in fact, originally is a Esquire magazine series. Anyhow, it's directed by Brian De Palma. There's this guy called Eric Schwab, who's the second unit director to Brian De Palma. He's been second unit on lots of Brian De Palma's films and continued to be.
And second unit is they'll send you off to, there's sometimes you're filming 2 things at the same time, and you will send someone
often
off to do that.
action or sort of background or something like that. And the director's filming with the main actors and what have you. He had this idea that it's all about sort of 80s excess and Wall Street and whatever. And there's a shot where Concorde kind of comes down. He wanted Concorde to be landing at sunset with the Empire State Building in the background. And Brian De Palma says, I bet you, okay, fine, do what you like, but it might not even be in the movie, and I bet you $100 you can't get it. He spends literally so many months. He works out that there's only 30 seconds of the year where the sunset and the Empire State Building are in the right place for the runway. I mean, they meticulously plan this shot. This is by one of the only things in the movie that works. Bit of a spoiler here. They hire a Concorde, and they have it landing, and he pulls off the shot. It's amazing. And you hover down out of a shimmering orange sky. It's amazing. It's 10 seconds. It cost them 80 grand in the 80s, which is a huge amount of money for one shot, because they got the Concorde to land and take off. And anyway, it all works. He puts it in the film, and it's one of those famous, but the film is still a flop. It's really interesting because Eric Schwab really wanted to be a director, but De Palma was his mentor, and he really wants to impress him. And actually, I recently was looking at Eric Schwab's. He's always been on Second Unit. All the way. Yeah, but he's done millions of, Second Unit for Brian De Palma on Mission Impossible. That's pretty good. He's done lots and lots of things. He was sort of an artist. He wanted to be a creator, and he had this vision of this shot. So that's my kind of favourite plane shot. But sorry to land that plane, as it were, Chris. They do often use stock shots, and people do complain that it's the wrong thing. This part of today's show is brought to you by the Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra, show's product.
Wow.
Now, if you're a fan of the show, you will know that Samsung have been sponsoring us, and we've been lucky enough to be given the new Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra to try. I have it in my hands right here.
Now, it's got some great features, and I'm going to test you out on one of them. This uses AI. This is one of the good things about AI. How would you say, Marina, how would you rate your artistic skills?
They're not too dreadful. I have previously mentioned that I've been trying to renovate some chairs this year. I've completed my chairs, actually. And also, I've been teaching myself calligraphy.
Well, I wonder if you could renovate a chair on your tablet now. No, I'm joking. I wonder if you could do a drawing for me. Is there a drawing you're any good at? Do something that you think I might recognise. Any drawing. Can you do that?
What, like a who? Like a character? A person?
Yeah.
Okay. I like the sound of that. Okay. I'm going to do it and see if you can recognise.
Okay, I'll do an edit on this and wipe it so it looks like you did it in like 20 seconds. Now, are you done?
Yes, I am.
I told you could do it in 20 seconds. It's the magic of editing. Now, with the Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra, it can turn anyone into a modern-day Picasso. Why don't you show me your picture?
I will show you my picture now. Here is my picture.
That's not bad.
An iconic character.
Is it my old art teacher, Mr. Tiller? In the top left-hand corner, you have something which is called the Sketch to Image tool, which you can have on this tablet. If you press it, something extraordinary will happen to that drawing that you just did. Sketch to Image. And AI will turn your drawing into something even more impressive.
There we go. Now, there is Sherlock
Holmes,
the famous deerstalker, slightly better than my rendering, I think we'll have to say. He appears to be in a sort of Brooks Brothers shirt. This is when he went to Welcome Wall Street after he'd finished doing all the.
It looks a bit like Fireman Sam, but that's because that's what you drew.
Yeah, I mean, there's a limit to what it can do.
But that was instant as well.
Yeah, that was instant. There we go.
Oh my God, you can honestly just show off to your kids all day long.
Another one.
Whoa.
See? Is it a Sherlock Holmes to you?
Yeah, it is. It's quite sort of hipsterish Sherlock Holmes.
But then I think there was in my original drawing.
I thought your original drawing is not bad.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The Samsung drawing is better.
Yeah.
But I think it should be. But yours isn't bad. I think you've got a future. I mean, it did take, listen, I don't want to give away any edits or anything like that. It took you about 7 minutes. And it took the AI about 0.1 seconds.
Yeah, it's very, very quick. And all the family will have endless fun with this because you can do all sorts of different things, seeing what you can create, fun cartoons all the way through. That wraps up this special section of the show, which was brought to us by Samsung Galaxy Tab S10 Ultra, where you can both watch your favourite shows and draw them at the same time. Richard, here's one that I feel both of us might have something to say about. Rob Master says, what are the execs of HBO thinking by greenlighting Harry Potter as a TV series? We know exactly what's going to happen and it's going to take an entire decade to finish. Why not spend the money on an original Harry Potter spin-off, same universe, same draw to Potter fans, but with the ability to actually create something fresh and exciting, something that gets people talking?
I mean, that's the easiest question to answer in the whole world, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, of course you've got to remake it. I mean, the book. I mean, if you were 12 when that first book came out, when the first Harry Potter book came out, you are 40 now. Okay, you are old. Firstly, it's been a long time since those movies came out. The thing that people love are the sacred texts, and the sacred texts are the books. I mean, that just happens to be the case. You can do a million spin-offs, and we know how spin-offs go.
And they've done a few. They've done fantastic, but there's people find them quite controversial, and they're not huge. They might do well, but they've done slightly diminishing returns.
Yeah, but I'm afraid this IP is very, very old, and
God,
if you grew up with it, you are old.
Yeah,
and therefore it's a tale that's going to need retelling. It's a tale tell that huge and massive, like 3 or 4 generations have grown up since these books came out. 2 generations have grown up since the films came out. There is a huge market here for a new generation to watch this exact same story. And there's a huge market of everyone who loved the books and who loved the films who just want to see exactly the same story again.
But at much greater length.
Yeah.
This is the closest thing I can think of in the whole of the entertainment industry that is an utter banker.
Yeah.
I mean, beyond.
That's what they said about Snow White, the live action Snow White.
No, I actually don't think that they would say that. They're going to spend, HBO, by the way, Francesca Gardner, who worked on Succession, who's Dark Materials, who's brilliant. She's going to be the showrunner of it. They say it's going to be 10 years. I would say it will be at least 12. They're doing something like $200 million a season. And each season, by the way, is going to be, I think, maybe 10 episodes, and it's for one book. I'll give you an example of how big a market is. I've seen more stories just about speculative casting for this show that hasn't even started shooting yet than I have about many of the biggest shows currently on TV. There's such fever about this always. And as I say, this is as close as to a bank as you can possibly get. It's interesting, I have to say that HBO are scaling back lots of things perhaps that they did before. There are fewer limited dramas being made because returning things and so much is being funneled into this show. But that's because it will be unbelievably, hugely successful, and there is just no possible way they wouldn't do this.
I mean, it's one of those things that we often think things are a lot more recent than they are, and think, why are you remaking this really recent film? And you want to go, no, it's really, really not recent. And obviously I've been working with Chris Columbus, who made the first 2 movies, and who, has amazing stories about the making of those 2 movies. But even he would say, oh no, I think it's time. You can now do a different version of that.
It's for TV. They're doing it totally different.
And as you say, instead of, 7 films, you've got 70, 80 hour-long episodes that are going to last forever. If you're the accountant looking after Harry Potter, and there will be a team of accountants, you can see how much money the books are making. They still make really good money. You can see how much money the films are making. They still do okay. But neither of those is going up. The numbers are not going up, whereas this will turbocharge absolutely everything. It's 12 years of almost certainly guaranteed profits for everyone involved in that industry. Exciting for everyone who loves the books. A fun gig for loads of actors.
And making them all in the UK at Leavesden. Yeah,
employing huge amounts of UK talent in front of the camera and behind the camera. Mozart wrote his symphonies many, many years ago, but people keep playing them. This IP now lasts forever, and they're going to remake this every 15, 20 years until the end of history. It is,
as we've said before, show business.
Yeah. John Lithgow as Dumbledore. See, immediately you want to recast it.
Janet Matera as Professor McGonagall, I think.
Come
Papa
on.
Estudillo maybe as Snape. Who knows? I mean, as I say, just the speculation is getting more kind of pull on the discourse, as it were, than a lot of the bigger shows currently airing.
There'll be some point in kind of season 4 where there'll be an old professor who just sort of pokes his head around the door, and you go, hold on a minute. That's Rupert Grint. And you're like, they're like just a million little things like that, which will delight everyone. So, what are the HBO execs thinking? They are thinking exactly the right thing.
This will be a good business.
Yeah, this will be an enormously profitable business that everybody will love and will keep us in a job for a really long time, I think is what they're thinking. Marina, Terry Wilson. Terry with an I, so a Lady Terry.
Lady Terry.
Steven Spielberg's press officer is called Terry Press.
Is she actually?
That's cool. I mean, she's more than a press officer. She's marketing. She's a million things. But her name is Terry Press. That's great, isn't it?
Incredible.
That's like Ronald Reagan's spokesman used to be called Larry Speaks. Anyway, I digress. Terry Wilson says, which shows which have been critically panned, publicly trashed and cancelled early have you loved and wish could return?
Okay, this is a bit of an originalist one, which I feel bad about, but it just did make me laugh so much. And I've since found a community of people who also regarded it as a sort of ridiculous watch classic. Aaron Sorkin is amazing. Sorry, it's just really bad when you have to start like that, isn't it? Aaron Sorkin is amazing. The West Wing's incredible. Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which ran for one season. How can I explain this if you haven't seen it? It was made by NBC, and it was effectively about Saturday Night Live, an NBC show that I also don't love and have never, like lots of British people just think, oh, well done, America, we don't love this. Tina Fey also had that same season out, 30 Rock, which was basically a half-hour comedy version of something about SNL. So it's like
Possibly the greatest sitcom of all time, by the way.
it's just so good. It's so good. I love 30 Rock so much.
It's got to be. It's definitely going to be in the argument. We should do best sitcom of all time as a bonus episode one day.
Oh please, yeah. Well, I mean that would be a long one. Matthew Perry and Bradley Whitford are kind of like a pair of writers who are given the reins of SNL. Not SNL, whatever it's called. Maybe it's called Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Never, ever, ever have TV programs about stand-up comedians or writers, because then you have to try and make them sound funny, and it's impossible.
It is so ridiculous. It's like, oh no, the show's in the doldrums. We're given we have to decide what to do, and they have to. The whole one is called The Cold Open. When this is episode 1. Okay, by the way, the show where you're like, what the hell am I watching? So they've got to try to get back the American viewer. And they can't think of a cold open till like almost the last minute. And then they think of doing a musical number, which is called Will Be the Very Model of a Modern Network Show. Everything about this is just a massive miss. And I feel so bad because, I see people like laughing at Aaron Sorkin for bits of dialogue and like, oh my God, okay, he's Aaron Sorkin. What have you ever done?
Yeah, so also
And I realise I'm doing a version of that now, and I'm sorry.
But listen, let's go on the record now and saying if he's ever written bad dialogue, it's because he's written more dialogue than anyone else. And almost all of it is better than anyone else's.
Yes, most of this isn't in it. But as just a sort of miss, it is, and I've watched the whole series more than once, and it's like 12 hours, or maybe more than that.
When you watch someone who's a genius doing something wrong, it's like I always think, it's great being...
I hate myself for this answer, by the way.
Being the fastest runner in the world is great. Okay, so if you're Usain Bolt, that's great. Unless you're running in the wrong direction, in which case you are farther away from where you need to be than anybody else in the world.
That's a very good way of putting it.
And seeing a great genius get something wrong, boy, oh boy, do they get it wrong in such an amazing like every single way that it can go wrong goes wrong to the nth degree, and it's incredibly expensive and beautifully shot and all of those things. So it's not like watching some cheap bit of TV that doesn't really work and no one cares about. It's an extraordinary production that everyone there is giving everything they can to.
Well, there's something
everyone
mesmeric about it. You can't look away. Like, how bad is it now? There's something about it that I find hypnotic. And actually, I'm going to have to watch another episode of it this afternoon when I go home.
I mean, literally every single person listening to this podcast is going, I'm sorry, I might just watch the first episode of that.
And I'm really sorry. I hate myself for that answer, but it's the honest truth.
This episode is brought to you by Sky, where you can watch unmissable shows, including the 3rd season of the incredible BAFTA-winning Gangs of London, starring Michelle Fairley, Joe Cole, Chope Derisu. It is on right now, Marina.
First of all, I'm not going to deliver any spoilers.
No spoilers.
I have, however, seen episode 1.
Same.
And
of the 3rd season.
Of the 3rd season, yes. And if you don't watch Gangs of London, it's what I love about it's that kind of heightened, stylised version of London. It's quite Gotham-like.
Yes.
There were shots in this that I thought were really like comic book cells in this particular, this first episode, which I'm not going to shock you, is quite dramatic.
It's quite dramatic.
If you watch Gangs of London...
It's relatively violent.
It's
I would say
relatively violent.
It's like Reacher comes to London.
Yeah, cocaine wars. Even the mayor's got a little middle class problem of her own there. But if you watch Gangs of London, you'll know that there's certain episodes that are just kind of like absolute standout ones. There was one in the first season that's so amazing, which is a sort of like bottle episode. They take them all away from London. They go to the Welsh countryside, and there's a raid on a traveller encampment, and that it's like a sort of it's absolutely brilliant, that episode. I think it's like episode 5 of the first series. It's like a movie. Anyway, there is a fairground element, I'll say that, a nocturnal fairground element in episode 1 of this one, which is quite something to behold.
It's an amazing thing. It's packed full of amazing actors. As you say, it looks an absolute $1 million. I always liked in the first series that their house is virtually next door to the pub where Ted Lasso drinks. And I think these two things don't feel like they're in the same universe to me.
I'd love it if they were in the same, maybe for a future season. But
Ted Lasso just walks past as Joe Cole is killing someone.
Yeah. Chope Derisu, who I absolutely love, who you've probably seen in lots of things.
New Bond for me.
People keep saying New Bond.
Wouldn't he be amazing? He's so good in Gangs of London.
Yeah, he's great in that season of Slow Horses he's in, and he's terrific in this. Am I allowed to say? I don't want to do any spoilers, but there is a tainted shipment of cocaine.
That's the worst sort of shipment of cocaine.
Yeah. Horror ensues. Horror ensues.
Yeah, and
It's very, very dramatic.
and I tell you who's not happy about it, the Gangs of London.
Gangs of London. Saying no more, I will say that it has a ripple effect that's quite astounding in the first episode.
But for people who haven't seen it at all, and I think you could absolutely start from the first season. If you like the first episode, it is quite violent, but it's also brilliant.
It's mega loved by fans, I will say that. I think that episode 5 of season 1's got an unbelievable high 9s on IMDb.
But it's called Gangs of London because it's about all the different gangs that control bits of London. There's the traditional British gangs, there's the Albanian gangs, lots and lots of different groups who sort of fall out with each other, form alliances with each other, don't quite trust each other. And so it is like an incredible sort of underworld soap opera all against the backdrop of a beautifully shot London. And an awful lot of people get beautifully shot throughout.
Yeah, and in quite an ugly way as well.
Yes, exactly. It's really it's a great show. First 2 seasons are amazing, but the third season on right now.
Watch season 3 of the BAFTA-winning Sky original Gangs of London now on Sky. That about wraps us up for today. Got a bonus episode actually tomorrow, which is on the worst chat show guests and appearances of all time. And if you want to sign up to the club, it is therestersentertainment.com.
And also, if you sign up, we did the best short books of all time, and anything we mention, any books we mention, you can get money off if you're a member. All sorts of fun things there.
Other than that, either see you for the bonus tomorrow, or we will see you next Tuesday.
See you next Tuesday.